Another mystery buried deep in the hills of eastern Washington keeps resurfacing. A bottomless pit said to be a pathway to the paranormal.
He said, this is an endless hole. And people get it confused with what I call the devil's hole.
For years, whispers have echoed through the forests of Washington state. Stories of a bottomless pit that defies logic and terrifies those who dare to believe. Known only as Mel's Hole.
Mel's Hole is a complex, very interesting mystery.
His land was more or less seized. He wasn't allowed to go on it or anything by the U.S. government.
It has been described as a place where objects vanish, animals refuse to approach, and the laws of nature seem to unravel. Decades after the legend first surfaced, a group of scientists set out to uncover the truth using advanced drone technology. What they discovered was so disturbing that the footage alone was enough to shake even the most skeptical minds. But what exactly lies beneath Mel's Hole? And why does it seem like someone, or something, doesn't want us to find out? The legend that refused to die. Deep in the forests near Ellensburg, Washington, there has always been a story passed down in hushed tones, shared quietly between locals, as if speaking too loudly might somehow attract unwanted attention. It was a story about a hole, perfectly round, unnaturally deep, and impossible to measure. No one knew when it first appeared, and no official record ever acknowledged its existence. It wasn't marked on any map, not even the oldest ones, yet, somehow, nearly everyone in the area had heard of it. Some claimed their grandparents had spoken of it, while others insisted it had been there long before any modern settlement. Hunters who roamed the forests told unsettling accounts. Their dogs, usually fearless and eager, would suddenly stop in their tracks when approaching the area. Some would whimper, others would growl nervously, but none would go closer, not even when commanded. It was as if they sensed something humans could not. Birds, too, seemed to avoid the space above the hole. They would veer off mid-flight, refusing to cross over it, creating an eerie gap in the sky where nothing dared to pass. Even the wind behaved strangely. People described how it would shift direction near the edge, swirling unpredictably, as though the air itself resisted entering that place. For decades, these stories were dismissed as nothing more than local folklore. Strange, yes, but no different from countless other rural legends. Most people who heard about the hole laughed it off, assuming it was just an exaggerated tale meant to entertain or scare. That perception, however, began to change in 1997. That was the year a man named Mel Waters called into a popular late-night radio show. His voice was calm, steady, and completely unlike someone spinning a ghost story. He spoke with confidence, explaining that the hole wasn't just a rumor, it was real, and it was located on his own property. According to Mel, the hole had always been there, long before he arrived. But unlike others, he hadn't ignored it. He had studied it. What set Mel's account apart was the level of detail he provided. He didn't rely on vague descriptions or second-hand stories. Instead, he explained the experiments he had personally conducted. Curious about how deep the hole really was, Mel decided to measure it using fishing line. At first, it seemed like a simple task. He tied a weight to the end and lowered it down, expecting to eventually feel it hit bottom, but it never did. He added more line, then more. Hundreds of feet turned into thousands. Thousands turned into tens of thousands. Still, there was no sign of an end. Determined to get an answer, Mel continued, feeding more and more line into the darkness below. Eventually, he claimed to have lowered nearly 880,000 feet of fishing line, an almost unimaginable distance, and still nothing. No resistance, no sudden stop, not even the faintest sound to suggest the weight had reached anything solid. No echo came back, no splash, no impact. It was as if the line simply disappeared into an endless void. The deeper Mel explored, the stranger things became. He noticed that snow refused to settle near the edge of the hole, even during the coldest winters. While the surrounding ground would be covered in white, The area around the hole remained completely clear. The temperature, too, behaved oddly. It didn't seem to change with the seasons. Whether it was the heat of summer or the chill of winter, the air near the hole felt exactly the same. Electronics brought near the edge would often malfunction without explanation. Radios produced static, batteries drained faster than usual, and recording devices picked up strange distortions. Even sound itself seemed affected. When Mel spoke into the hole, his voice would sometimes echo back, but not in any normal way. The echoes were delayed, warped, and unsettling, as if something deep below was trying, and failing, to mimic what it heard. At first, many listeners dismissed Mel's story as nothing more than an elaborate hoax. It sounded too strange, too impossible to be real, but there was something about the way he told it that made people hesitate. He wasn't trying to convince anyone. He was simply stating what he had experienced. Then came the story that changed everything, the story of the dog. And suddenly, what once sounded like harmless folklore began to feel far more real and far more disturbing. Experiments in the impossible. Mel wasn't just curious, he was methodical. Where others might have avoided the hole out of fear or dismissed it as a strange natural formation, Mel approached it with a kind of quiet determination. He treated it like a scientific anomaly, something that needed to be studied, tested, and understood. Over time, he began running small experiments, carefully observing and documenting everything he could. It didn't take long for him to notice patterns. The first and most consistent was the behavior of animals. No matter what he tried, they simply would not go near the hole. Even when food was placed right at the edge, fresh meat, scraps, anything that would normally attract them, they refused. Dogs would whimper and pull away. Other animals wouldn't even come close enough to notice the bait. It wasn't learned behavior, it felt instinctual, like some deep, primal warning telling them to stay back. Mel realized that whatever the hole was, it triggered something beyond human perception. So he shifted his focus. If animals wouldn't interact with it, then objects would have to do. He started simple, tossing small rocks into the hole. He expected at least a faint sound, a distant clink or thud, as the stones struck the sides or bottom. But there was nothing, no echo, no indication that the rocks had hit anything at all. They simply vanished into the darkness. He escalated from there. Metal scraps, tools, even larger items were dropped in one after another. Each time, the result was the same: silence, complete, unnerving silence. It didn't matter how heavy or bulky the object was, there was no sound of impact, no scraping along the walls, nothing to suggest movement through a physical space. It was as if the objects ceased to exist the moment they disappeared from view. This defied everything Mel understood about physics and sound. Even the deepest wells or caverns would produce some kind of echo. But this hole behaved differently. It absorbed everything: light, sound, matter, without a trace. And then came the experiment that would change everything. A neighbor's dog had recently died. It was an unfortunate, ordinary event, until Mel and a few others made a decision that would haunt them. Driven by curiosity and perhaps a willingness to push boundaries too far, they decided to use the dog's body as part of their testing. They reasoned that lowering it into the hole, secured to a rope, might finally provide some kind of answer. They tied the body carefully and began lowering it into the darkness. The rope fed steadily downward for hours. There was no resistance, no sudden tension, nothing unusual. Just the same endless descent Mel had experienced before. Eventually, they decided to pull it back up. But when the rope returned, it was empty. At first, they assumed the obvious. The body must have come loose. Maybe the knot had slipped or the rope had frayed. It was disappointing, but not entirely surprising given the strange conditions around the hole. Life went on, but only for a few days. Then something happened that none of them could explain. The dog was seen again, alive. At first, it seemed impossible, like a case of mistaken identity. But those who had known the animal were certain. It had the same markings, the same scars, the same physical features. It was, without question, the same dog. But something was wrong. It didn't respond to its owner's voice. It didn't show recognition or affection. Its movements were stiff, almost mechanical, as if it were mimicking how a dog should behave rather than acting naturally. And its eyes, those who saw it would later say, looked empty, not blind, but hollow, like something was missing, or worse, replaced. The story spread quickly, and opinions were divided. Some dismissed it as coincidence or imagination. Others believed something far more disturbing had taken place. Mel, however, didn't need convincing. He had seen enough. Whatever existed inside that hole didn't just consume, it altered. It took what was given to it and returned something different. After that, Mel never attempted another experiment like it again, because some questions once answered are better left alone. The witnesses and the second hole. Mel's story, as strange and unsettling as it was far from the only one. Others began to come forward, sharing experiences that added to the mystery and made the legend of Mel's Hole even harder to ignore. One of the most striking accounts came from a longtime rancher in the area. He claimed that on a quiet night while tending his livestock, he witnessed a beam of light shoot straight out of the hole, piercing the sky. But it wasn't like normal light. It was perfectly vertical, unwavering, and seemingly solid, like a column rather than a diffuse beam. The sight left him shaken, and he told Mel that no flashlight, searchlight, or natural phenomenon could account for what he had seen. Another local, a construction worker who had spent decades operating heavy machinery, reported hearing a deep mechanical hum emanating from the hole. He insisted it sounded like vast machinery operating far below the surface, yet no buildings, tunnels, or industrial equipment were nearby. Even people who only visited the area briefly noticed oddities. Teenagers who dared each other to toss objects into the hole consistently reported the same chilling phenomenon: silence. Total, unnatural silence. No clatter, no echo, no sound of impact. Only an eerie void where sound seemed to vanish completely. As compelling as the Washington stories were, some of the most unsettling reports came from much farther away. In the Nevada desert, whispers persisted about another mysterious hole, one that shared several characteristics with Mel's Hole.
Bottomless pit said to be a pathway to the paranormal. Como4's Denise Whitaker heads east in search of the hole.
Unlike the Washington site, this hole wasn't discussed openly. People spoke about it carefully, sometimes in hushed tones, sometimes not at all. Those who did report seeing it often described a heavy military presence, black helicopters patrolling the area, armed guards, and large restricted zones marked with signs warning visitors to stay away. Some theorists began to speculate that the two holes were connected, part of a hidden underground system, or perhaps linked in ways that defied human understanding. Others suggested that these holes were not merely geological phenomena, but gateways to another dimension, or even something more sinister. One particularly strange witness account involved seeing a large metallic crate being lowered into the Nevada hole. According to the report, it made no sound as it descended. No scraping, no impact, nothing. Just like Mel's Hole, it seemed to swallow everything entirely. Then, as suddenly as these stories emerged, they began to disappear. Online forum posts vanished, witness accounts stopped appearing, and planned expeditions to investigate were mysteriously canceled after anonymous warnings. Some researchers claimed to receive phone calls urging them to leave it alone. It was as if something or someone was actively erasing the truth, suppressing the evidence, and keeping the mysteries of these holes from ever reaching public knowledge. The parallels between Washington and Nevada were uncanny. In both cases, strange occurrences were reported, inexplicable phenomena were witnessed, and every attempt at scientific documentation seemed to vanish or be blocked. The idea that these holes were connected, or that a powerful force was preventing the world from knowing their true nature, was no longer merely speculation. It was becoming an unsettling pattern that begged one impossible question. What lay beneath these bottomless voids, and why was no one allowed to find out? The investigation begins. Years later, a scientist named Dr. Ethan Caldwell decided to investigate the legend of Mel's Hole. Unlike most who had dismissed the stories as folklore, Caldwell approached the claims with skepticism. He wanted evidence, facts, and data. But the deeper he looked, the stranger things became. Records that should have existed were missing. Maps of the area had been altered, and the land itself had been sealed off from public access. Something didn't add up, and Caldwell began to suspect that there was more to the story than anyone had publicly acknowledged. Determined to uncover the truth, Caldwell assembled a specialized team. It included Mark Henshaw, a skilled drone operator experienced in deep Earth exploration, Dr. Lillian Cho, a seismologist who studied underground disturbances and unexplained energy readings, and Jacob Reese, a former government scientist who had worked on classified geological research and could provide insider knowledge. Together, they planned a careful, discreet investigation into the supposed bottomless pit. Traveling quietly and avoiding major roads, the team eventually located the hole, exactly as Mel had described, perfectly round, unnaturally smooth, and surrounded by a strange, almost oppressive silence. There was no sound of wind, no wildlife, only an eerie stillness that seemed to stretch endlessly. The team deployed a custom-built drone equipped with high-resolution cameras, electromagnetic sensors, and devices to detect unusual energy fluctuations. At first, the drone's feed showed only darkness, but as it descended, something began to appear. The walls of the hole were smooth, almost polished, as if artificially refined, not natural rock. Sensors detected strange energy fluctuations, waves of electromagnetic disturbance that defied explanation. The team watched with increasing unease, unable to determine whether these readings were environmental or something else entirely. And then, an impossible sight appeared on the screen. A shape, faint at first, slowly coming into focus. It resembled a hand floating in the darkness, completely disconnected from any body or surface. The fingers twitched ever so slightly, as if responding to something unseen. Every instinct told the team to look away, but no one could. And then, abruptly, the drone signal cut. No crash, no interference, no technical malfunction. The drone simply vanished. It was gone, swallowed by whatever force existed within the depths of the hole. The team sat in stunned silence, realizing that they had encountered something far beyond their understanding, something that refused to be measured, recorded, or contained. The cover-up. Moments after the drone disappeared into the depths of Mel's Hole, the situation escalated in ways no one could have anticipated. Within minutes, helicopters appeared on the horizon, their black rotors cutting through the sky with a menacing precision. Dark vehicles swarmed the area, converging on the team's location with alarming speed. Armed personnel, dressed in unmarked uniforms and moving with disciplined efficiency, quickly secured the perimeter. There was no warning, no negotiation, just the sudden, undeniable presence of authority that left no room for argument. The team was immediately detained. Their carefully collected equipment, cameras, sensors, and data storage devices was seized without explanation. Attempts to resist or ask questions were met with silence, stern gestures, and, in some cases, threats. According to later reports, Dr. Ethan Caldwell, the lead investigator, lost consciousness at some point during the ordeal. When he came to, he found himself in a nondescript motel room, miles away from the site, alone. His team had vanished. Their whereabouts remain unknown to this day. Even more unsettling, Caldwell discovered that his research had been systematically erased. Files, recordings, and logs of the expedition were gone, as though they had never existed. Colleagues who had worked with him before the mission refused to acknowledge his recent activities. Online references, scientific records, and any public accounts of the expedition had disappeared. It was as if he himself had been erased. Not just the evidence, but the investigator. Attempts to return to the site proved futile. The area had been transformed into a highly secured zone. Signs warning of severe penalties for trespassing were posted everywhere, while armed guards patrolled continuously. Drones and surveillance equipment monitored the perimeter, making any attempt at covert access nearly impossible. Even seasoned explorers and geologists avoided the location after hearing first-hand accounts of the sudden, overwhelming response to the Caldwell expedition. Speculation ran rampant. Some theorists believed the government had discovered something within Mel's hole that defied explanation, something so extraordinary or dangerous that it could not be allowed to remain public. Others argue that authorities were attempting to contain whatever forces or anomalies existed within the hole, preventing anyone from disturbing it further. A more unsettling line of thought suggests that the truth about Mel's hole may be far beyond human comprehension. The sudden disappearance of the drone, the removal of Caldwell's team, and the erasure of all documentation hint at something that is not just hidden, but actively protected. Perhaps whatever lies beneath the surface is not meant to be seen, measured, or understood. It may operate by rules that humanity cannot perceive, responding to curiosity with consequences far beyond ordinary risk. For many, the incident raises a chilling question. What exactly exists at the bottom of Mel's hole? Is it a natural anomaly, a man-made phenomenon, or something beyond the realm of science altogether? Whatever the answer, the events surrounding Caldwell's investigation suggest one undeniable truth. Some mysteries are not only unsolved, they are deliberately kept that way. And perhaps, in this case, for reasons humanity is not ready to confront. To this day, Mel's hole remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries ever told. No official records confirm its existence, and yet the stories refuse to fade. From impossible experiments to vanished scientists and mysterious cover-ups, the legend continues to grow darker with every retelling. Was it all just an elaborate hoax? Or is there truly something hidden beneath the surface, something beyond our understanding? If the footage was real, then the question isn't just what was down there, but whether it's still there, and if it is, who or what is keeping it hidden? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries like this.